Keith Smith covers the NBA, Spotrac.com. Long time we have talked about this organization, and a lot of times we're talking about them being disappointing in the playoffs. Keith, they were disappointing on the floor this year. Morey's been all over the place. We had Nick Nurse on the show on Tuesday because they are not in the playoff. They are in the lottery. Let's get your take, Keith, on how big it was for them to go up to number 3 in the lottery on Monday night.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's certainly better than dropping back to 7 and losing the pick, which, I think there were some anxious moments probably in the room, and then as we all watched the reveal on TV as well. But this is big now. You're not going to get Cooper Flagg. You're not going to get Dylan Harper, who are the 2 top prospects in this. They're each kind of in a tier of their own. But then if you keep the pick, you can go with the next 2 guys on my board would be VJ Edgecombe or Ace Bailey. Both could fill real needs for the Sixers in some major ways. So I think those would be important guys to look at. Or the bigger thing, which maybe is more important, this could open up some trade possibilities. And I think if you're Daryl Morey in that front office and Nick Nurse and the coaching staff, what you're sitting down and going through right now is, all right, do we trade this pick with probably some other outgoing salary in a deal that will return win-now talent for us? Do we feel like Embiid and George are going to be able to be reliable enough that's worth doing? Or do we draft a player and now we put that player with McCain and Maxey, and we have a little bit of a bridge to whatever is next if Embiid and George just never make it back reliably enough?
Yeah, there's so much we can get into, and we will with Keith Smith right now. They stay at number 3. Do you look at the talent at number 3 as a player who steps right in and plays and makes an impact right away? Is that the type of player in this year's draft? I mean, there's a lot of drafts. By the time you get to the 3rd pick, that guy is such a project that sometimes they don't contribute all that much. Do you look at this year's draft and say, no, the Sixers should get a player at number 3 that should help them if they stay at 3?
Yeah, they should get a player that can help them. Now, a guy like VJ Edgecombe, for example, he is more of a ready-to-go defender than he'll be anything else day one. And your question would be, all right, how much playing time is he going to get in a backcourt that maybe already has Maxey and McCain and Grimes, and then Eric Gordon's probably going to opt in. Where does that playing time come? Do you get an impact that way? So then you look at, all right, well, Ace Bailey, one of the comps people have made for Ace Bailey is Paul George. He's not quite the all-around passer and defender that George was when he came in, but as far as just a guy who can make shots, he's a guy who can make tough shots, he's got good size for his position, so he's a guy that you could look at and say, all right, well, Paul George is probably going to miss some time, if we're being honest, the way things go, so he could probably plug right in and play, and that might give you an option then, all right, well, we could use a guy like Kelly Oubre in a trade, because we're assuming he's going to opt in, we could go in a different direction, so I think you can get guys who can contribute right away. I don't know that they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's a 20-point scorer and lifting us to a whole new level, right out of the gate, because that's not very likely. But rotation contributors, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. We talked to Nick Nurse on Tuesday, and I asked him, I said, did you have any thoughts that Jared McCain would have the impact that he had? He said, absolutely not. And I asked him if that gives him now a longer leash for some of these rookies. And, he said, not necessarily, like you got to earn that time. But, is there a guy that you think fits in with this team? You just mentioned, hey, maybe they got a logjam here. But is there a player that you think would be available to them? Here's the problem, because you might have a player that fits better, but you don't take it 3. So are the Sixers a prime trade back candidate, even though Morey has been pretty steadfast that they're staying at 3? Do you think it benefits them better? Is there a player you think fits for them in a trade back scenario?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I think it's always funny because people talk all the time about, oh, this team should trade back. This team should trade back. Well, that assumes that there are teams that want to trade up. And the little bit of the challenge in this draft, like I said, you got Cooper Flagg, tier of his own. Dylan Harper, tier of his own at 2. These are my personal rankings. Then you got Bailey and Edgecombe kind of in their own group. So if you're Philly, Now you're trading into the next tier of guys. There's a lot of good players there. And that's assuming you're only going back to let's say 7, 8, 9 in that range. There's a lot of good players in there that you could get. But I think if you're Philadelphia, you have a hard time selling to anyone. All right, if we're trading back and adding more volume of picks, well, what good is that for a team that is built around Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey? We should be trying to add somebody who can help right now. And then your other question would be, let's say they work to trade with Brooklyn, who's sitting at 8 and has multiple other first-round picks, and Philly went the volume route there. The question is, all right, well, now we traded out of a guy who could definitely help and is probably better, and do we need a volume play? Where are we going with this? So I think that's why they're probably most likely to stick where they are and make a selection and bring in someone, again, like Bailey or Edgecombe, who can slot in. One other thing with Edgecombe that I didn't mention, you draft a guy like him, he's kind of Quentin Grimes-ish, and I know that people are going to be like, wait, Grimes was our breakout guy. He was the best thing we had going in the second half of the season. But he's also a restricted free agent. Let's say Brooklyn gets a little crazy with an offer sheet, and Philly's like, I don't know that we can go that way. If you draft a guy like Edgecombe, now you're feeling a little bit like, all right, well, yeah, we had to let Grimes go, but at least we've got somebody who can step into that three-guard mix with McCain and Maxey that we feel pretty strongly about.
All right, you've talked a lot about Edgecombe. Ace Bailey is the other guy from Rutgers. A lot of people are saying that he's the third guy. What about him would you like as a fit?
Yeah, I like the way that he can score. I think he's going to be an NBA scorer. I don't know how much else he's going to do. I don't know that you're ever going to look at him and be like, there's a great lockdown defender. I don't think we're ever going to get there. I don't know that he's ever going to be a great playmaker kind of all around. I'm not sure that's going to be a thing that we see out of him either, but I do think he'll score at the NBA level. And if you're Philly, if you're looking at it and saying, all right, we're kind of a little uncertain with Paul George. What does this look like? Now you've got a guy you can plug in there. And, he's probably not going to get you 20 a night day one, but you can kind of put him in a spot where it's like, all right, we can probably get him out there, and he's going to get us 12, maybe 15 points and feel pretty good about that. And he's got a little bit of flexibility to play either forward spot. There's some who suggest that he may even be able to play as a very big 2, again, kind of Paul George-ish. So there's a lot of reasons to like him as a fit as well.
Keith Smith, Spotrac.com, covers the NBA. Edgecombe and Bailey, they seem to be the debate at 3. Is there any other player that you're intrigued by that if somebody took them at 3, that it wouldn't be egregious?
Yeah, the only other guys that kind of come to mind for me, and I don't know that these two guys are really fits for Philly, are Kasparis Yakushonis as well as Jeremiah Fears. Those two guys are really they're probably more point guard than shooting guard, but they're kind of scoring guards a little bit. But they're both more on-ball guys. And when you already have Maxey and McCain, I just don't know why you would need a third guy who does that same thing that starts to be a little bit too much overlapping skill sets. So then that takes you down to Trey Johnson. He could be an interesting player there. Big time scorer. He's got a lot of Cam Thomas, Jordan Clarkson in his game where he's going to take shots. He's super confident. He comes in kind of feeling like, hey, I'm the best guy going here. Good luck, to everybody else. Let's go. And that's, great confidence to have. And then if they were to trade back, and fall a little bit deeper into the draft, then you're looking at guys like Derek Queen, Kaman Mawaj, a couple of bigs that would give you that insurance for Joel Embiid long term, or a guy like Igor Demin who looks like, all right, he could also be a real player on the wing, is a big playmaking type player. And that's, again, if you trade back at all, but you stay in, let's say, the top 10-ish range.
Keith, you trade back. Is there a level of player that you would be interested in? You're not getting Giannis most likely in a move back situation, obviously. But is there hey, if we can get this guy to flip-flop places with you, it gives us an established player, and we stay in the, somewhere in the first round, and we give up pick 3. Is that guy someone to keep an eye on draft night?
Yeah, there could be a world where if you could work out something with the Brooklyn Nets where maybe you could get like Cam Johnson. That starts to be, all right, we sacrificed a few draft slots, but we're still going to get a pretty good player to come in and be a part of our rotation as a rookie. And we added Cam Johnson. That's probably better than, Edgecombe or Bailey at 3. So that would be a spot. I don't think Washington's in a spot where they're really looking to move up. Utah's probably like, man, everything went as wrong as it could for us at the lottery, but getting to 3 is not really where we want to be. And then that puts you like Toronto. Toronto has a lot of guys, and that would kind of be like, all right, well, what would you be looking at to get off that Raptors roster? If it was a position where it was, and I don't assume this would be anything that Philly wants, but if they were like, man, we really love Jakob Poeltl as our, answer while Embiid is out, or we really like RJ Barrett to be another guy in the wing, yeah, maybe you could trade back and bring in one of those guys. But that's the problem, because the trade up teams, you have to return value if you're Philly beyond just a whole bunch of slew of draft picks. That's why Brooklyn makes sense. And I don't know about New Orleans. They've got an awful lot of guys. I just don't know that any of them are a real pure match. There's part of me that would love it if they traded for Zion Williamson and just went all in and said, hey, if we can get everybody healthy, man, we are gonna we're going to be something to deal with here. But I think that's a bridge too far with another guy who would be likely to miss an awful lot of time.
Right. That's kind of, we're talking with Keith Smith from Spotrac.com, covers the NBA. That's what I'm saying is, like, is there a player or a team that says we would value number 3 so much that we're willing to give you an established player? And the guys you kind of rattled off, they sound more like secondary role type of players, so that if you're Philadelphia, you're probably swinging to hope that pick 3 is a much bigger impact than one of the guys you mentioned. Now, you throw Zion into the mix, now you have to start thinking about it. You're going to give me Zion, I give you pick 3, and I move into your spot. That's something you have to consider if that's offered to you, right?
Yeah, you have to at least look at it. Now, here's the challenge if you're Philly. It's getting to the matching salary for Zion. Like, that's going to be an issue, because now you're talking about, this is where this gets really complicated, because by the time you're having to answer these questions, you may not have clarity on Andre Drummond and Eric Gordon and Kelly Oubre Jr., if they're picking up their options. And Zion, I mean, he's still a $30 million player, so getting a salary match, that's going to be a real challenge. That's why, people love to dream up these scenarios where, well, we'll do 3 and we'll do Quentin Grimes in a sign-in trade out. But now you're talking about a team saying, all right, yeah, you pick for us at 3 because you can't do that pre-draft. So you're going to pick for us, and we're going to hope Quentin Grimes is there, because people forget in a sign-in trade, the first part of that is the sign portion where the player actually has to, agree to it. And that's why we don't see things like that. And then when we do, the NBA starts snooping around and saying, hey, wait a minute, you're working all this out a little too early here. Let's have a conversation about tampering and future draft picks, which, Philadelphia's been on the other side of as well.
All right, Keith. So obviously they get that 3rd spot. This was a disastrous year. Morey has given a lot of indication. He actually made a comment that basically said, at this time, we feel good about all of our players being available for game 1. And he did throw Embiid in there as well. They have been pretty steadfast in conversations this offseason. Morey has been on multiple podcasts. Nick Nurse was on with me on Tuesday. They've all kind of indicated they expect Embiid to be ready. That's a big if, obviously. But with Embiid, George, and Maxey, are they right back in the mix in your eyes as a contending team, or are they way off based on what we saw from them last year?
No, I think they'd be right back in the mix. You have to look at the state of the Eastern Conference right now. Milwaukee, if they trade Giannis, we're going to take them out of the mix. Boston, we're probably going into a gap year for the Celtics without Jason Tatum. They're probably going to be in a spot where it is, all right, they're going to have some stuff to figure out themselves. So take them probably out of the mix. So now you're looking at, all right, Cleveland, they've washed out 2 years in a row in the second round. What are they going to look like next year? Do they make any roster changes? Then you have the Knicks and the Pacers, really good teams, really solid teams. I think they'll be back again. But if you're Philadelphia and you're like, we're starting out with a healthy Embiid, a healthy Paul George, and we've got in Tyrese Maxey, and then we were able to add a draft pick and we fill out our depth, I think all of a sudden you're feeling pretty good about your chances next season, because you're at least on paper, you're looking at it. You're probably going to have, this is where Daryl Morey's going to have to work, right? He's going to have to keep doing work to add depth and make sure, he's continually tinkering around the edges of the rotation to make sure if Embiid goes down for a month, if George goes down for a month, you have the right kind of guys to step in. But if you have those guys to start the year, you're starting out the year feeling really good about your chances.
All right, let's talk about Morey then, because a lot of people thought he deserved to be fired and should not be the guy. Where do you stand on Morey? And, if you are the Sixers, Morey, obviously they didn't get rid of him. They think he's the right guy with what they have in this situation. Would you have leaned towards they should have moved on from Morey, or do you think that Morey is the right guy for this situation?
Yeah, I'd stick with him and give him another year. And if they can't get Embiid and George relatively healthy or get out of those deals and reset in a very meaningful way where they're ready to move forward successfully, then you probably have to think about making a change. But I'll say this, for all the people, and I've seen them on social media getting real loud about Daryl Morey's going to go, he should be fired. If you were super excited a little over or a little under a year ago when you were like, man, we have Paul George and we're going to win a title and all this stuff, well, you can't be mad that it didn't work out because you were on board then. Everybody told you. I remember talking with you guys saying, hey, this all looks perfect if they stay healthy. If you're one of the people saying, man, these guys are never healthy, this is never going to work, then I'm not going to argue with you too much. If you think they blew it and made the bad decision. But if you were all fired up about it a year ago, you don't get to now be screaming and yelling about this. These guys are always hurt. We all knew that going in. That's a little bit of the challenge. So, that's where I kind of come down on that.
He said in a recent interview that, he's only had one losing season. He says, we're pretty good at this winning thing. Is that a tone-deaf type of comment from a team that just lost 59 games? Now, listen, I like Morey. I think Morey deserves to be the guy here. I think he's the right guy. I like what he's done on the peripherals of this team. When you sign Embiid and George and that blows up in your face, those two things overshadow all the good. So people are so mad about those two signings that the Grimes trade and finding Bona and drafting McCain and getting Maxey, like those moves really you should get some applause for, but nobody cares because of the Embiid and George thing kind of blowing up in their face.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it, right? When it's, those things sound great until you remember they didn't play a meaningful game after, like, Christmas. It really was, all right, this kind of fell apart on us in a big way and, went completely sideways and it was all done. So that's where that part does scream a little tone deaf. And my thing is, I'm with you. I also like Daryl Morey quite a bit as well. I think he is really, really good at this. And I never am gonna get too up in arms about, hey, what did he ever win with the Rockets? Not his fault. He built a Rockets team that ran into the Dynasty Warriors every year. I mean, there's just nobody was getting out of the West for a pretty long period of time. So I think that is a challenge. And let's call it what it is. Those Rockets pushed them really close. But on the other hand, you haven't ever won anything. You've never gone on any kind of run with this Philly team. And we're not in year two. Like we're a few years into this now. So that does scream a little like, hey, back off. Like we've won a lot, because let's face it, Philadelphia fans at this point, they don't want to win 50 games and be out in the second round. They want to be in the conference finals, in the NBA finals. They'd rather win 44 games, be the seventh seed, and play their way into the NBA finals that way than win a whole bunch of regular season games and lose. Fans are they're over it right now. It's time to let's start winning real games here.
All right, Keith Smith, obviously a lot of NBA playoffs. You are close to that Celtic-Knicks series. Awesome performance by the Celtics last night. Did you see enough from them that they can win two more?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? Because there was obviously a ton of emotion last night. Guys played really well. The crowd was, fantastic, and that's the perfect example there of like, let's rally around our guys, right? Let's make this happen for our guys, and I felt really good about they got at least one more day in the sun, right? With this group together going into New York, it's going to be tough, right? The Knicks are really good. I think the Knicks might have shown up a little bit thinking like, hey, just, weather the early storm and then these guys will roll over for us. And the Celtics didn't do it. But the Knicks are going to have to work. I don't think the Celtics are going to hand them the game by any means. The Knicks have not, run away with a single game in this series where Boston has run away with two of them. So if I'm the Knicks, and it's tight late, I know they feel pretty good because they've got Jalen Brunson, but there's going to be part of them thinking, man, I don't want to go back to Boston. Like, this is not what we want to do, because that Celtics crowd now, it'll be, hey, we're full on house money. Let's go. Let's get this win. So this is a really, really important Game 6 for the Knicks to close this thing out.
All right, before we rock and roll out of here, Keith, right now you've got that series still going on. The Pacers have advanced. Minnesota has moved on. You got the game tonight, which is Denver, Oklahoma City. Who are you picking in the finals?
In the finals, I'm gonna. Well, if I wanted to cheat, I'd say the winner of Thunder Nuggets to beat the Knicks would be what I would say right now. But I'm gonna go Thunder over Knicks in the finals. Really what I'm hoping for tonight is Nuggets force a Game 7. Like, that series has been awesome. Yeah. We all, as NBA fans, we should all be begging, for another game, one more game, and that's where, let's get there and let's kind of go. So that is, that's where I'm kind of at with that one. But yeah, I think it's it's the Thunder. Just, we've seen what they can do there, and I think the Knicks are probably the most complete team left, but the Pacers are gonna push, and so are the Timberwolves. Like, you could tell me we're getting 2 7-game series in the conference finals, no matter who it is, and I'm not going to argue with you very much.
All right, I like that Thunder team a lot as well. We'll see what happens. That game's tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Nuggets and OKC. It has been a lot of fun. We'll see if the Thunder can advance. He's Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Spotrac.com is where you can check out all of his work. He's got a great update on all of the teams, their off seasons, where they stand in the draft. Go check that out over at Spotrac.com. And, of course, you can follow him on the X platform at Keith Smith NBA. Thanks, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
There's Keith. And, of course, the NBA draft, June 27th, right here on 97th. June 25th, I should say.